They say betrayal doesn't come from your enemies. It always comes from those closest to you. For me, John Miller, a 35-year-old retired Marine, that became crystal clear the moment my wife, Sarah, decided my illness was the perfect opportunity to start a new life. Without me, without our 10 years together. But I never expected the girl from a hardscrabble background, whom I'd once pulled from poverty, to betray not just me, but everything we believed in. The hospital ceiling swam before my eyes in blurry patches. Dr. Harris, a balding man with a weary look, was rereading my test results for the third time, as if hoping to find a different diagnosis. His fingers trembled almost imperceptibly as he crumpled the corner of the paper. Mr. Miller, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. You have an aggressive form of cancer. You need immediate surgery and a course of chemotherapy. Time is of the essence, and the bills will be substantial. Don't pull any punches, Doc. My voice was raspy. How much are we talking? $300,000. Minimum. And that's just accounting for the surgery, chemotherapy, and subsequent rehabilitation. Familiar footsteps echoed in the hallway. Sarah. The tap of her heels reverberated in my temples like a metronome, ticking away the seconds. I turned my head and saw her freeze in the doorway. Something flickered in her eyes. Not fear, not sympathy. Something cold, calculating. John. She covered her mouth with her hand in a feigned gesture. Oh my God, this is impossible. Sit down. I patted the edge of the bed. We need to talk about how to handle the money. She remained standing, nervously fiddling with the strap of her designer handbag, my Christmas gift from last year. Maybe we can sell a house. Her voice trembled, but her eyes remained dry. Or take out a loan. The house is mortgaged to the hilt, and they're not going to give us a loan. You know my salary. The news spread through the military brotherhood like a shockwave. By evening, my hospital room was overflowing with my former brothers in arms. Mike Donovan, my best friend since boot camp. Steve Parker, the sniper who'd had my back in dozens of ops. Jim O'Neill, our medic, who saved my life in Fallujah. Brother, we scraped together the down payment. Mike laid an envelope on the nightstand. 50 grand. It's just the start. Guys, I can't. I tried to protest, but Steve cut me off. Shut your pie hole and listen up. Remember that day in Fallujah, when you pulled 3 guys out from under heavy fire? Yeah, I remember. So now it's our turn to pull you out. Marines don't leave their own behind. Sarah stood off to the side, her gaze fixated on the envelope. There was something predatory about it, almost hungry. I saw her furtively checking her phone, rapidly typing messages to someone. A week later, she filed for divorce. She sent the papers via courier. She didn't even have the guts to bring them herself. There were just a few lines in the accompanying note, but each word burned like napalm. I'm sorry, but my plans don't include being a caregiver. I'm young and I want to live life to the fullest. And yes, I'm taking half of all the money. I have a right to it by law. That night, the phone rang. I recognized the gruff voice instantly. Tom Haley, our former combat medic. After the war, he'd become chief of staff at St. Mary's Hospital. John, you sitting down. Lay it on me, Tom. Can't get much worse. It can. Your soon-to-be ex has applied for a position at our hospital. Know what's interesting? Her application doesn't mention you once, but she's very interested in our exclusive wing for wealthy patients. Something clicked in my head, like the bolt of a rifle before firing. Tom, my voice turned hard. Remember how we pulled off that op in Baghdad? When everyone said it was impossible. Yeah, I remember. You got another crazy plan cooking. Even crazier. Tell me, how long would it take to arrange my transfer to your hospital, so that no one, especially my soon-to-be ex-wife, knows who I really am? There was a pause on the line, then his laughter broke through. The same laugh that always foreshadowed something incredible. God, John, I thought the war beat all the crazy out of you. 3 days. Give me 3 days and we'll set up a surprise for your wife she'll never forget. Footsteps echoed in the hallway again, this time hurried, nervous. Sarah was rushing towards the exit, triumphantly clutching the transfer documents in her hands. Her lips curled into a smug smile. You always said every betrayal should be punished. Tom's voice on the line turned serious. It's time to teach her the lesson she deserves. Yeah, I watched my wife's retreating figure. Time to show her what happens to those who betray a Marine. 2 weeks at Street Mary's Hospital had turned into an endless stage play. I wore the mask of a dying billionaire. Sarah wore the mask of a caring nurse. We both played our roles with impeccable accuracy, each pursuing their own objective. Only I knew the final act of this drama. Tell me about your ex-husband, I asked one evening as she changed my IV drip. Sarah's hands trembled almost imperceptibly. Why dredge up old wounds, James? She sat on the edge of the bed, and I caught a familiar gesture. She always adjusted a strand of hair like that when she was about to lie. It's a sad story. Sometimes talking about sad things is helpful. My raspy whisper, distorted by the bandages, sounded compassionate. Helps you understand yourself. She was quiet for a moment, gazing out the window. The setting sun painted her profile in golden tones, and for a moment I saw the girl I'd fallen in love with 10 years ago. He was a military man, a Marine, she began quietly. All about his duty, honor, serving his country. I was so proud of him at first, but sometimes duty kills love. How did that happen? He chose service over family, constant deployments, a penny ant salary, and when he got sick, she sighed dramatically. I just realized I wasn't ready to bury my youth next to a dying hero. Everything inside me boiled with rage, but I continued to play the part. What about the vows? In sickness and in health. Vows. She chuckled bitterly. James, what's the difference between you and him? You built an empire, made a fortune. And him, all he knew was to put his head in the line of fire. He called it valor. At that moment, her phone buzzed in her pocket. I knew it was my message from my real number. Sarah, please, tell me, did these years mean nothing to you? Excuse me, I need to answer that. She stood up. Work issues. Through the security camera, I saw her typing a reply in the corridor, her lips curling in disdain. They meant something. They taught me you don't get anywhere on valor. And now I've found real happiness. I'm going to be a rich widow soon. Bitch, Tom hissed, watching the monitor in the next room. Listen, maybe enough is enough. We'd already have enough material for. No, I shook my head. She needs to go all the way. To the end. The days blurred into an endless series of conversations. I told fabricated stories about my empire, about multi-million-dollar deals, about yachts and mansions. She hung on every word, her eyes burning with a greedy gleam. James, she said one time, adjusting my bandages, I often think that life gives us signs. Meeting special people, it's no coincidence. Do you believe in fate? I turned my head slightly, watching her reaction. I do. And you know what else? I believe that some people deserve a second chance, especially those who really understand the value of life. Like you? My voice softened. So caring, so devoted. She blushed, but there was a hint of smutness in her eyes. I'm just doing my job. No, Sarah, you're doing much more. Next to you, I feel alive. That evening, she bragged to her friends in the nurse's lounge. I heard every word through the bugs Tom had planted. He's crazy about me. Her voice dripped with triumph. He was talking yesterday about how lonely it is in his Florida mansion. He hinted that after he recovers, he'll need someone to make it feel like home. What if he doesn't recover? One of the nurses asked. All the better, Sarah laughed. A rich widow sounds even more romantic than a rich wife. And I've already checked. His entire estate is bequeathed to charity. I just need to sweet-talk him before. I turned off the listening device. Two feelings battled inside me. Disgust for the woman I'd once loved, and a strange admiration for her cold-bloodedness. She had really learned a lot over the years from me. How are you holding up? Tom asked, dropping by with an evening check. Is it tough to hear that kind of stuff? You know what's the scariest? I unwrapped some of the bandages so I could take a swig of whiskey. I'm starting to understand her. This desire to break free from poverty at any cost. I mean, I taught her that the ends justify the means. Don't go feeling sorry for her. Tom poured himself a whiskey. She knew what she was getting herself into. I'm not. But sometimes at night, I think, maybe I created a monster. When I pulled her out of that hole, showed her the good life. Cut it out. He squeezed my shoulder. Everyone makes their own choices. She chose betrayal. The next morning, Sarah brought homemade pastries. I recognized the recipe she used to make these rolls on Sundays. You know, James, she sat closer, her hand accidentally brushing mine. I think about you so much, about how unfair life is, such a successful, generous man, and completely alone. Not alone, I squeezed her fingers. Not anymore. Her smile was triumphant, a shark sensing its prey. She already saw herself in the role of a rich widow, planning her new life, not suspecting that her every word, every gesture was being recorded and documented. That evening, I stared at a photograph on my phone, our wedding, Sarah in a simple white dress, radiating sincere joy. Where had that girl gone? Or had she never even existed? The tests are excellent. Tom was reviewing my medical chart, and there was a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. The tumor is completely in remission. As you can see, even real cancer couldn't kill you, Maureen. So we're taking the bandages off tomorrow. I touched the bandages on my face. Perfect timing for the final act. She's already sent out invitations to her friends. She's going to have a whole delegation, wants to show off her victory, and the engagement ring. I smirked. Sarah didn't know she was showing off the very same ring I'd given her 10 years ago. Tom had bought it back from the pawn shop where she'd sold it the day after the divorce. James, her voice interrupted our conversation. She entered the room, glowing with anticipation. I'm so excited about your release tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'll finally see you without the bandages. Aren't you afraid? I deliberately made my voice sound unsure. The cancer and chemo could have changed my appearance a lot. Oh, darling, she sat on the edge of the bed, taking my hand. Does that even matter? I fell in love with your rich inner world, your generous soul. Appearance is just a shell. In that case, I squeezed her fingers. Maybe tomorrow, when they take the bandages off, maybe it will be the right moment for an important question. In front of all your friends. Her eyes flashed with triumph. You mean? I already have the ring. I nodded towards the nightstand. All that's left is to make the proposal official. When she fluttered out of the room, elated with the anticipation of tomorrow's triumph, Tom shook his head. A walking, talking train wreck. She didn't even wonder why a rich fiancé would make a proposal in a hospital room. Greed blinds you. I looked at the receding silhouette of the woman I'd once loved. She's in such a rush to become a rich bride that she's forgotten the first rule of marriage. Know who you're saying yes to. The curtain was ready to rise. The last act promised to be unforgettable. The morning of the final day at the hospital was unexpectedly sunny. The VIP wing of St. Mary's Hospital gradually filled with people, Sarah's friends, nurses, even a few reporters from the local newspaper. Everyone was waiting for the romantic moment, the marriage proposal from the mysterious billionaire. You okay? Tom entered the room where I was checking the bandages for the last time. You look tense. I'm fine. I flexed my fingers, feeling the familiar pre-combat adrenaline rising inside me. I was just remembering our last conversation before her betrayal. She said then, Johnny, love is stronger than any trial. Funny, isn't it? The familiar click of heels sounded in the corridor. Sarah was rushing to make the final preparations. I saw her reflection in the window. An elegant white dress, expensive makeup, a new hairdo. She was getting ready for her triumph. Good morning, darling. She fluttered into the room, glowing. How are you feeling? Today is such an important day. Nervous, I deliberately made my voice sound raspy. So many people. Oh, don't worry. They're all here to share our joy. She adjusted the folds of my hospital gown. You know, I didn't sleep all night thinking about our future, about that big house in Florida you were talking about. At that moment, her phone buzzed in the pocket of her robe. The last message from her ex-husband. Sarah, please, just tell me. Do you have no feelings left for me? She irritably took out her phone, forgetting her role as a caring nurse for a second. God, how you annoy me. Go die in your poverty already. I'm going to be Mrs. Harrington soon, a billionaire's wife. And you're nobody. Lovely words. I smiled under the bandages. Very sincere. What? She froze, not understanding the change in my voice. Go on, Sarah. Tell everyone gathered here how much you love the wealthy Mr. Harrington and how much you hate your ex-husband. Everyone who'd been invited had gathered in the hall. Tom turned on the lights, directing them at the hospital bed as if they were spotlights on a stage. It's time. Tom nodded to the orderlies. Wheel a bed out to the hall. Let everyone see our little show. Sarah, standing in the center of the hall, beamed when she saw me being wheeled out. Her friends gathered around, whispering and looking at the engagement ring. On a small table nearby were the prepared documents for registering the marriage. Sarah had made sure everything was organized, even inviting a registrar. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom's voice echoed through the hall. Today is a special day, a day when masks will be removed. Literally and figuratively, I added, raising myself on the bed. James. Sarah stepped towards me. Let me. No way, I raised my hand. Let me do it myself. The first bandage fell to the floor, then the second. Confusion replaced by horrified recognition appeared in Sarah's eyes. It can't be, she recoiled. John. Hello, darling. I smiled, looking her directly in the eyes. What's wrong? Not happy to see the husband you were in such a hurry to bury. A dead silence fell in the hall. The journalists frantically scribbled in their notebooks. Phone cameras were pointed at us. This is some kind of mistake, she stammered, stepping back. I don't understand. Yes, you do. I took out my phone. Want me to read your messages? About how you dreamed that I would die. How you plan to become a rich widow. I can explain. Of course you can. You've always been good at explaining. How do you explain why you abandoned your dying husband? How do you explain to your friends that you found a rich replacement? Her face twisted. The mask of the caring nurse fell off, revealing her true nature. You were spying on me, manipulating me. Me? No, darling. I just gave you the opportunity to show your true colors. And you did a brilliant job. You know what's most interesting, ladies and gentlemen? Tom interjected, addressing the crowd. While Mrs. Riley was planning to become a rich widow, her husband actually defeated cancer, without her help or support, and she didn't even recognize him. She was blinded by greed. I looked at the registrar's table, where the wedding documents were lying, waiting for signatures. Then I took other papers out of my robe pocket. Remember these documents, Sarah? You were in such a hurry to send them. Well, today I'm actually going to sign something, only not where you expected. I walked over to the registrar's table. I laid the divorce papers next to the marriage contract. You wanted a wedding ceremony with signatures in front of witnesses. Here you go. Only instead of I do, I'll write you're free. No. Please. She fell to her knees, but there was no remorse in her eyes, only the fear of losing her last chance at wealth. You know what's the scariest? I took the pen and signed the divorce papers in a bold flourish, pointedly pushing the marriage contract aside. It's not that you betrayed me. It's that even now, you're thinking only about the money. John, I love you. I just got confused. No, Sarah, you didn't get confused. You made a choice, and now you have to pay the price. I turned to the journalists. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a fascinating story for you. A story about a nurse who tried to profit from cancer patients, about how she planned to embezzle money collected for treatment, and about how justice ultimately prevailed. Sarah slumped onto the floor, her expensive dress crumpled, her makeup smudged with tears, but I no longer felt pity or anger, only weariness and relief. Goodbye. I placed the signed documents next to her. I hope it was worth it. As I left the hospital, under a barrage of camera flashes, I felt as if I'd taken off a heavy flak jacket after a long battle. Tom walked beside me, smiling. You know what's most ironic? She never understood the main thing. What's that? That true wealth isn't money. It's loyalty, honor, and the ability to love no matter what. Something she had, but she failed to value. The sun blinded my eyes. A new life awaited, without masks, without betrayal, without lies. And somewhere in the hall of Street Mary's hospital, a beautiful woman in a white dress was sobbing over her shattered dreams of wealth, never understanding that she had rejected the most valuable thing she had. The weeks following the hospital spectacle were a whirlwind of media attention. Sarah's face was plastered on every news channel, her story a cautionary tale of greed and betrayal. The public, always eager for a scandal, devoured every detail. The gold-digging nurse became a hashtag, a meme, and a national punchline. My life, however, took a different turn. The military brotherhood rallied around me, not just with financial support, but with an unwavering sense of camaraderie. We celebrated my recovery with a backyard barbecue, swapping war stories and roasting marshmallows. The laughter felt genuine, the bonds unbreakable. I was finally home, in more ways than one. Mike, ever the pragmatist, helped me sort through the legal mess. The divorce was finalized, the financial settlement a hollow victory for Sarah. She received her legal entitlement, but her reputation was in tatters, her chances of finding another wealthy benefactor slim to none. She tried to reach out, Mike said one evening, handing me a crumpled piece of paper. Sent a tearful letter full of excuses. Said it was the pressure, the fear of poverty. I glanced at the letter, the familiar handwriting, a painful reminder of the past. But I didn't read it. I didn't need to. Sarah had made her choices, and I had made mine. I tossed the letter into the fire pit, watching it turn to ash, the last vestige of our life together. Tom, on the other hand, was enjoying his 15 minutes of fame. He'd become the whistleblower doctor, his interviews filled with dry humor and sharp insights into human nature. He even landed a book deal, a dark comedy about the absurdities of the medical world. Still can't believe she fell for the whole billionaire thing, Tom said, over a late-night whiskey. She'd seen the way we live. The pickup, the beat-up Harley. You never even had a single suit. She didn't want to see, I replied, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. She saw what she wanted to see. Wealth, power, a way out of the life she hated. And you were the escape route, weren't you? The meal ticket she thought she finally landed. Yeah, I took a sip. She learned from the best. I showed her how to play the game. I just didn't expect she used the skills against me. I started attending group therapy sessions for veterans, sharing my experiences, helping others navigate the emotional minefields of PTSD and readjustment. It was a strange kind of catharsis, speaking about the pain, the loss, the betrayal. It didn't erase the scars, but it dulled the edges, making them bearable. One afternoon, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, unassuming box, no return address, no sender's name. Inside, I found a worn, leather-bound journal. I recognized it immediately, my grandfather's war diary. I'd given it to Sarah years ago, hoping to inspire her, to share a glimpse into the values of honor and sacrifice that had shaped my family for generations. She had never shown any interest in it, calling it old-fashioned and irrelevant. I opened the journal, running my fingers over the yellowed pages. I read about my grandfather's time in the trenches, his unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers, his faith in the ideals he was fighting for. It was a stark contrast to Sarah's cynical pragmatism, her relentless pursuit of self-interest. That night, I sat on the porch, the journal open on my lap. I reread the last entry, my grandfather's final words before being sent home. We may have been through hell, but we emerged stronger, our bonds forged in fire. I closed the journal, a sense of peace washing over me. I finally understood. I hadn't lost everything. I hadn't been broken by the betrayal. I'd been forged in the fire, stronger and more resilient than before. I decided to put the money that my buddies had raised to good use. I set up a foundation to provide financial assistance for veterans struggling with their medical bills, especially those dealing with the invisible wounds of war. It wasn't about revenge or redemption. It was about paying it forward, honoring the sacrifices of those who had served. I also started teaching self-defense classes to women, empowering them with the skills to protect themselves, to stand up against abuse and manipulation. It was a way to honor the women in my life, my mother, my grandmother, the nurses who had served alongside us in the combat zone, and even Sarah. In a strange way, her betrayal had given me purpose. I never saw Sarah again. She vanished from the public eye, relegated to the dustbin of tabloid history. Her whereabouts became a subject of rumor and speculation. She'd moved to a different state, changed her name, become a recluse. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think about her. I'd wonder if she ever understood what she had lost. Not the money, not the opportunity to live a wealthy life, but the chance to be a part of something real, something meaningful, the chance to be loved.